I've got my two basic front and back sheath dress that were created from my basic, oh, I've got it flipped, my basic front and back skirt and bodice. And that's just so you can see how it sets up. So they're consistent in that they fit the same form. And the darts are aligned perfectly on both of them, with the leftover being in the armhole and the shoulder currently. So I'm going to delete those because I don't need them, but I've already done that part. If you want me to go over how to create them, that's a different video, or you can find the video. I've double checked to make sure that they align perfectly. So the center front and back are parallel to each other while the side seams are touching and the side seams are identical. And I created a rectangle. When you create a rectangle in this program, it automatically is perfectly parallel to the grain and perfectly square. So if you ever have questions about it, you can just create it and then rotate the pieces to it to make sure that they're on the correct grain. So, and while I'm here, I don't think I changed them, but I'm going to go to Modify Realign Grain and just make sure that my grain lines, I don't think they're going to move, although this piece did flip over because the grain line flipped. So the side seams are identical, the center, front, and back are parallel, and it would be worth checking to make sure that this line on both pieces is also parallel to the center, front, and back. So I'm going to create line offset, and I'll just move it over there where that line is. And when the line disappears, I can set it down. But it looks to me like the line is still perfect. Every once in a while, it doesn't hurt to check with as many people as use these. So that one's correct too, but I'm just going to leave it where I can delete it. So if you start out with a piece that's balanced, it's so much easier to end up with a dress that's balanced and it hangs right. Okay, so I'm going to move this armhole dart to the shoulder and just create a very basic princess dress. I'm also going to pull a line down across the waistline. I don't know that that will change anything, but we'll be able to look at it. So I've got this notch right at the waist, and it's the same on both pieces because I put it on one and copied it to the other. So create 2-point line, highlight the notch when you see that yellow square come up, release, and then right click in the water and say vertical, and then you'll know that that line is perfectly opposite of the grain. Same with this one, the notch, highlight, right click in the water, vertical, set it down. And I let it a little bit outside of the piece so it will be easier to grab and delete later when I'm through with it. So I'm looking at where these lines are intersecting, and that does frustrate me a little bit. I want them all in the same place, the same distance away. This one is lining up with it, but this one looks like it's a little off. And on the front, I have the same kind of thing. So because this is a draped pattern, this is probably the most accurate. And it's a little higher. And the dart in front can be higher, and the back one can be lower. But the disturbing thing is that this one isn't necessarily identical to that one. But if you look at this, they seem to have gotten off a little bit. So I'm going to fix that. So this video is also going a little bit into truing and balancing. So there are a number of ways that I can fix this, but I think the easiest one, because this does not look the same as this, and those two distances need to be the same. So I am going to create a line by mirroring. Select the lines to mirror. I'm just going to mirror all 4 of them and see what we get. Say OK. The line to mirror around is this one. So clearly they are not the same. And I want to choose 4 lines that match each other. And so I'm going to delete all 4 of the outer ones, because if I choose these inner 4, they align with each other, they're the same width. And when I've got it on the form, if it's too tight or, if it's too loose, I can pinch it in more, which is what would happen when you come to the wider lines. And I would rather err on the side of having too much fabric. So I'm going to go ahead and delete the lines that are on the outer edge so that the piece stays a little bit bigger. And that looks more uniform to me, but this looks a little odd. So I'm going to take this line and pull it all the way up here, and we'll do something similar with the top of that dart. So I am just thinking in terms of geometry and balance right now. And if you don't understand plain and solid geometry, that's okay. I hated it when I took the class. But the logical common sense things about keeping angles equal and extending lines and creating equality is what helps clothes hang correctly based on the grain and the gravity. So I'm going to modify the line and adjust the length. So I'm in modify line, up in the corner, adjust. I'm going to touch the end of this line and pull this up. And it looks to me like that has gotten off over time. So I'm going to create another line. And this time, 2-point perpendicular on line. I'm going to do the whole thing so it's going both directions, and I'm going to choose my basic perfect line right here, and I'm going to pull it out where the end of the dart is. And then I'm going to delete this line and just blend it in with the other 2. And by going through and doing that, it makes it a lot easier for things to match up later. So I'm going to clip this line, modify line, clip. I want this line until it intersects with this one. Then I want this line until it intersects with that one. So now they're combined, and that is part of the princess line that was there. And this one, now I'm just going to create a 3-point line. So create a 2-point line, start here where that is, and then line up exactly where those two lines intersect. Then pick that up again. Oh, no. Well, we'll delete that. So I'm going to highlight this line, go all the way to the end so it's connected to that line, and then I'm going to come back down and connect it to that line. So that triangle is a perfect connection to the other line that was perfect. So modify, delete line. I'm just going to delete that little one, and I don't need this one anymore. So I do need to fix this curve. And I'm going to clip that one. Modify line, clip. And I want to keep the upper part of the line until it touches. So it's this line. I want to keep this part of the line until it touches this one. So it clipped nicely, and I can just blend this the rest of the way down. Create 2-point curve, and I'm going to back out a little bit so I can see both ends of it. It's this side that I want. I'm just going to continue that and see how it lines up with this one. So it looks like if I just end it right there, that's going to be good. And then just give it a little bit of a smooth curve. I'm pulling it out away from the left side. I don't want it to cross over into the other line's space, but I do want it to touch without crossing over. So that's why there we go. And I will double check that again before I separate them. So we've got everything back where it belongs. I've got a balanced triangle going both directions. And this is about 1/4 of an inch below the line. It looks like maybe only 1/8. But when I trace this off, okay, I'm going to have to draw you a little explanation. When I trace that off, I don't want sharp points. Most of your sewing teachers are going to teach you to have this sharp point going this way and that sharp point going that way, and then you've got all this back stitching and a really pointy area right there when you finish sewing that dart. That's a bad idea. And I'm going to exaggerate it a little bit. When you've got a dart that looks like this and you sew it together, and I know it's not perfect, but when you sew that together, and say this from here to here is the piece and the person's rib cage across here, and they're breathing. Breathing. You've got this nice fabric and this sharp point. As you breathe, this is going to tear out. For the most part, the thread that we use is stronger than the fabric that we use. And so the thread is going to hold on right here because there's usually back stitching. So after you've worn this beautiful outfit about 3 times, it's going to start to tear a little hole in the fabric. If you tear a hole in the thread, you can replace that, but you can't just mend that fabric. So it's a pet peeve of mine. We don't leave these sharp corners. So instead of doing that, I like to create a 2-point curve. I don't want to cut off a lot of the triangle. This one's kind of severe, but I'll come down and I will just put a little curve there. This one, you know, that one's probably overkill. That you don't usually see a dart that big, but you just want to round it out a little bit without crossing over. I crossed over a little bit right here, but without crossing over, so that when you sew this dart in, you can have it more secure. Instead of starting here and ending here, you're going to start part way over, sew down to the end, and then you'll start this far and sew down to the other end. Then you have this little overlapped area that's reinforced, no pointiness. It's a nice smooth curve, and it spreads the stress out over the fabric in such a way that you can breathe and not ruin your clothes. Okay? So that's what I'm going to be getting at on the piece. That's Louise' theory for fisheye darts. Okay, modify, delete lines. But you don't want to learn that the hard way. Smooth curves, right angles. Keeps everything where it belongs. So instead of worrying about how these don't quite overlap right, I'm going to come in and create a 2-point curve, and I'm going to try and make them the same. In fact, because they are already balanced, no, not right there. Well, that's not what I wanted. Because they're already nicely balanced, I can create that line right there and just smooth it out a little bit. Maybe zoom in some more. I don't want the line to come outside because that makes a messy bubble. But I can come over and aim right toward that point without having the line come outside, and if I make it a little bit less, it's just going to be safer for the clothes. So I'm going to create line mirror, and the line to mirror is this one I just made, and I want it to mirror around this one, so now it's lining up exactly where the other one did. So I'm going to delete that extra messy line, and then I'm going to come back up to clip. And I know people get confused between split, combine, and clip up here at the top. So clipping and splitting are two different things. Splitting is taking a line that already exists and cutting it wherever you touch. Clipping chooses a line. You want to keep this part of this long line until it touches this one, and then you want it to cut off right there. And you want to keep this long line until it touches this one, and now you have one nice smooth line. And because it's a dotted line, I don't know if it's still true, but when I learned the software, you couldn't combine a dotted line, only a solid one. So I don't usually try to do that. Okay, I want to clip this line where it intersects that one, and I want to clip this line where it intersects with that new one. Okay, so if I zoom out and I try to merge, modify line, combine. Okay, so I know you can't see it, but that made a big mess. This line has now wrapped around on itself, and if you look closely, you will find that there are two lines right there. So don't do that. I'm going to undo. So now it's happy again. And I'm going to go ahead. I'm going to save this because I like this piece just the way it is, and I'm going to overwrite the original because it's better than it was now that I've done those things. And I'll do the same thing with this one. But you're not allowed to do that unless it's your pattern and it's got your name on it. Yeah, I know, I didn't need to say that. Okay, so this one's already in the shoulder. This piece is ready for me to turn into a princess dress. And this one is close. I want to do that same thing right here. And the lines look pretty much the same, but we're going to double check them anyway. Create line, mirror, all four of them. Say okay, mirror around that line. And it's just a total duplicate. So I'm going to undo that because I don't want the extra lines there. And these lines don't quite cross over each other. If I wanted to, I could come up to modify line adjust and pull those lines out so they crossed over, but because I'm going to put a little curve right there, I can skip that. So I'm going to create another 2-point curve, and usually I will connect about 1 inch above and then come down and kind of so the one point is right below the other. But again, I don't want to overlap either end of that line. Okay, that looks good. And since I want it to be the same, instead of doing the same thing down here, I'm going to create line mirror and use this one and mirror around that one and then clip again. So modify line clip. I want to keep this line until it overlaps that one, and I want to keep this line until it overlaps this one. Select the line to clip on the side to keep. Select the intersecting line. Something happened. This line. Okay, so they're overlapping a little bit. That's not good. No. This one till it touches that one. Okay, we're doing okay. This one until it touches that one. This one until it touches that one. All right, I think I got it. So they just kind of overlapped a little bit, but they're going to be so close that it's not worth adjusting that. So the last thing I need to do for this, now I could use the line that I've got there as my princess dress. I don't have to move it to the shoulder, but we've already done one with an armhole dart. Didn't we? Sometimes my memory makes me sad. Yes, the front one is going in the armhole, so I'm going to continue with where I was going in the shoulder. So I'm going to rotate this dart into the shoulder, and I want to make sure it's in the center. Well, I want to make sure it lines up with this one, so we're going to measure and make sure these two lines are the same length. So verify line length, touch, say OK, 2.48 and 2.614. Oh, the horror. It's 1/8 of an inch off. Well, I could go to the trouble of moving it over. How long is this line? 5.093. Where's my calculator? See how lazy I am? It's more accurate. Okay, 5.093 minus 2.485 equals 2.608. It is. The back is about 1/32 of an inch wider. I can live with that. I can also live with this not being the same. I just want the seams to line up. So I'm going to put a little mark at 2.485 over here, because I don't want this video to become all about truing and balancing. I mean, we're going to cover that enough. 2.485. So I'm going to create a notch and right click in the water distance from point choose this point and I'm going to enter positive because it's clockwise 2.485 so that it's identical to the back. Okay. So now when I rotate that dart, I can put it right where I want it. Advanced, darts, manipulate. The first one is rotate. Select the dart to rotate. That's this one. The rotation point is the bust point. The hold line is the center front. And the opening point is right where that notch highlights. So I'm going to release now that I've got that square. I'm not moving any internal lines, so I'm just going to say OK, and there it is. So I could move that down, but I don't want to. I'm going to set it down so I retain my ease. And now I want to get rid of that corner notch, so modify, delete notch. Don't need that anymore. And I want to create my 2-point line. I think we went over this concept in darts. So I've got a line that comes straight over here because I set the dart down equally distant from the other one or close to that. I've still got my ease in here. So I'm going to modify a single point, and I'm just going to touch that one and pull it over so that it's sitting right on that line, parallel to where it was. So I can delete that line now if I want to. Well, see, this is why the other one was off. And I'm going to save this piece. File, save as. And then I'll save it with a new name next. So I'm going to create another 2-point line that connects to this one and comes down and connects to that point right there. And I don't want to get rid of the lines that I've got if I'm going to keep using this piece, but for this particular operation, I want a line that starts here and ends parallel to that, but I want it to touch this line. So I'm apparently going to have to start at the other end. So right here on this, no, I just sound so whiny. Okay, so it'll stick there because I started at the other end, and now I can come down and join that line. So this area for the piece that I'm working on, the top of my dart isn't going to be directly above the one in the skirt, and that's going to be okay because my skirt can balance a little bit differently than my top. I'm more concerned about the balance of the skirt when it comes to the way it swings. So if you want, for your, so that you can see easier, I'm going to go ahead and delete those original dart lines. But that's why I saved the first one. As a basic, I want those lines here instead of where I moved them to. So modify, delete those, delete line. I'm going to delete those two, and now I want this to be a different piece. File, save as. I'm going to call it my piece. Princess front map. And I didn't save that last one to the menu when I saved it, so I hope it's there. And that's why that line was shorter before. Modify line, adjust the length. So I'm going to move this down. It's where the dart used to be. This is, yeah, okay. So I'm going to leave this line pretty much where it is, and I'm going to put in a smooth curve right there. That's mostly exactly where it is. Create 2-point curve on this side, starting right there, ending right there, and make sure it's not crossing over the line. Alright, so when I trace this off, it's going to go pretty smoothly, but it will be more smooth tracing it off if I can split that dart so it doesn't try to go all the way around the dart every time. So modify line, split. I'm just going to highlight and come down here then and split that on that line. Okay. So now I'm going to get my, and this one I'm going to save as my map too. File, save as. If you keep your maps, it's easier for me to help you when you have problems. What did I call the other one? Princess back map. Create piece trace. We're going to get 4 pieces. Oh, there's a little bump right there, but I can fix that probably more easily after it's traced off. And if I want to, I can copy my grain line and the center line. I don't have to, but I just did so you could see it. There it is. That is my center back. So instead of my map, it's going to be my center back, and I'll delete map. And this one, make sure you highlight the one that's closest to the side. Say OK. And I can copy that if I want to. And that one is my princess side back, not my map. So I have my first 2 pieces that were traced off of this one, and I'm going to move this down so it's not in the way. Create piece trace clockwise and in order. And see, there you've got the possibility of it wrapping around, but it probably won't. And I could say none, but uh-oh. Well, it gave me the piece. Center, front, not map. And this one. Trace. looks pretty nice. Side, front. Okay. So I want to save all of these pieces with the names that they've got. Make sure they've got names that you want on them and then save them. So I'm just going to click on the save button, touch all of the pieces that I want to save, say OK. I don't need my original pieces because this is just my princess dress. And I'm going to come up and create, edit model, add pieces, and I'm going to add theory to it for me, but you don't need to. Okay, it's like music theory, only pattern theory. Okay, so I've got all the pieces I want in my model. And now I'm going to send them to the menu. And I can get rid of all of my jacket pieces. Because I don't need them right now. In fact, I can get rid of those two. All right. Make sure there's nothing over here in the view screen. If there is, click on cancel, and then you can right click in the water and say piece to menu. Okay, that's a good stopping place.